Good morning. Thank you for joining the May 10th, 2018 VOLTHA TST call. We are recording the session to post it later to the VOLTHA playlist on YouTube, so please keep that in mind during discussions and presentations today. And with that, I know we have the main agenda we talked about on Tuesday was the FCAPS management presentation and discussion led by AT&T. I have two quick topics I wanted to go over first that have sort of come up that I thought we should try and just briefly discuss today before I hand it over to Mike for his presentation. So the first item is a request that's come in related to OpenOMCI, and that is if we could have that move to have it as a separate VOLTHA module. And so the drivers for this in part are the amount of code reviews that are planned in the next few months. And now we have a team with multiple developers on it. And so it seems like a good time to perhaps have it as a separate module. So are there any comments from the group or any objections to that direction?
I don't object. I'm just kind of wondering, what does it mean to be a separate module, a separate Git repo? I'm just trying to understand
so that,
what it means.
I don't know if Sean Ying, you are on. So Sean and I took it over, or actually I had Sean take it over to ask with ONF when he was there. So I think there's someone who deals with that. So I don't quite know what's involved yet, but it sounds like there's someone there who would be involved.
I think it's what Chip was asking, just not repo, but you know, so each, for example, like Broadcom or you have a set of the reviewer, right? So I don't, maybe the OpenOMCI today doesn't really have that separate separate category today. So basically just create something like Broadcom ONU or, you know, the HA, you know, that kind of stuff, right? So we have that level of the owner and category created as a module owner. So we're just going to add the OpenOMCI on top of that.
Okay, so it's all in the same single repo still. It's just that they have people on their team with permission to do the +2 submits.
Yes.
Yeah,
that.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, makes perfect sense. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we will proceed with that. So Sean, if you can help me figure out if there's any sort of administrative stuff that has to happen on the ONF side to do that. And then I'd like to get those updates put on the wiki as well, because we have a list of module owners on there that probably needs to be updated for some other items also. So
is this still on it? Is this still on it? Because I've not checked the wiki, because wiki is going through some major changes.
Okay. A few days ago it was, but you're right. There has been some reorganization on the wiki. So it was on there previously. I'll have to look to see if it's still on the site. So you're right.
Sorry, what are you questioning, if it's still on the wiki?
The list of module owners.
Yeah, it's still there. It's under the administration and project management section. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I didn't actually delete anything. I just moved things around.
Just reorganizing.
Yeah.
Right.
So things are
just
easier.
need to find it.
Yep.
And thank you for that ongoing work. Much appreciated. And probably a good point for us to mention that to the group as well, that there is some reorganization going on the wiki, so you may need to look in slightly different places to find material as it's being reorganized. And we do have sections now for the 1.x architecture, and then a separate one for the 2.0 architecture. So that has been divided up as well. So Saurav, thank you for that work. All right, so I think everyone's aware that Chip Bowling has been leading the work on the OpenOMCI development. So for the new module, the plan would be for him to be one of the +2s. So let me see if we have Kim on the call. I don't see Kim on. So Kim had been covering the +2s when VOLTHA had not been, was, you know, combined, I think, with the ONU adapter module. And so we'll have a discussion with Kim on whether he should continue to be included in the +2s for that as a possible reviewer, time permitting. And then I think the other proposal is to add one of the members from the AT&T Foundry that's going to be working on the development work as well as a potential +2 as well. So any objections from the community on that proposal? So it'd be Chip, potentially Kim, and potentially a person from the Foundry, AT&T Foundry, for the +2s on the module. So they would be the module owners.
And I think who else wants to be added?
For as contributors or as as module owners?
As a reviewer?
As reviewers? Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, that's true. So we should probably figure something out. I don't know how to formalize that, but if you would like to be included as a reviewer for the OpenOMCI work or added as a reviewer, probably contact me and Chip and we'll get that figured out. And that can be an ongoing process as well. Okay. So thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Not just that, right? With the contributed in an composition changes. So if anybody want to add it to be reviewer for other modules, also let us know.
Okay, because we do have additional ones like the OpenOLT adapter and other items as well, and the technology profiles work is underway. Okay. Anything else, Sean? Then the next item I just wanted to point out, I think everyone's seen it on VOLTHA Discuss, but wanted to point everyone to the section on the wiki that David added related to technical profile management. So there's some material here. I'll let you review it on your own time, but I did want to make sure I pointed you to that new material on the wiki for your review. And again, there is a link to that on the VOLTHA Discuss topic that David had sent out. Can't remember when it was. It may have been a couple days ago now, either yesterday or
it was just yesterday.
It was just yesterday. The week seems longer than that. Okay, thank you for that. Those were the two main items I wanted to quickly go over with the group. And I think with that, Mike, if you are ready, I will hand the presentation rights over to you for the FCAPS management discussion. Are you ready?
Well, let's see.
Okay, you should have presentation rights now.
How's that looking? Is that looking good?
Yes,
yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have been going, trying to think about, getting some type of something deployed this year. And while this might not be kind of the only way VOLTHA will ever be used, we think this is a key way, and we think that it falls into the FCAPS story, and it falls into kind of our understanding of starting to put some pieces together for what could be a good set of applications and things that will bring VOLTHA into a deployable situation in 2018. So we have kind of all thought, I guess, a little bit about what could be a way of deploying this. So for us, we're going to focus on kind of treating VOLTHA along with ONOS pieces as a peripheral pod to manage, let it manage itself and let it do things for itself. And we want that to be as lightweight and as small as it can be, but we still need obviously to have the control and the management that we're envisioning. So we think that as the hardware that would be used to abstract the applications, the actual physical VOLTA hardware itself, and then the hardware to provide compute and other things, are all co-located in the edge. We see for this time that is kind of all residing under ONOS and all kind of coming together with ONOS apps. So we see that the pod is having the compute, the fabric, the hardware resources for VOLTA, and then for software resources we see ONOS and VOLTA and ONOS apps as kind of the minimum set of deployment. To this, we think that we're going to need to add some ability to manage. We've talked over the last few weeks about maybe some Yang kind of interfaces, and we have kind of come to one idea that we would like to propose as where that management could reside, where it should reside, since and how it could be implemented, and we think that it could very easily reside in ONOS on top of VOLTA. So not building all of this necessarily into VOLTA, but building it into an ONOS app. So this is rather a simplistic view of what we're seeing a pod contain, but we think that I think it represents the essentials of what we need to get out there and be able to manage and deploy and flow through provisioning and all that kind of stuff for 2018. I don't think that there's anything really new on this slide, that it hasn't been there before, other than we're saying we do expect that the controller software and the VOLTA software to be co-located with the hardware in compute, all of it down in as small as we can get it pod. And then we think that to supplement and to control all of that, we're going to need some types of management application, and we see that best fitting in as an ONOS app, and we see that the management API that could be exposed northbound being netconf Yang. Netconf Yang tools doesn't have to be netconf Yang. We would prefer Yang. It could be repconf. It could be any time. I mean, it could. We're not really necessarily tied to the protocol that needs to be used northbound more than we are to a Yang type of definition that can pull all of this information together and expose that northbound.
So a couple of questions. Sorry. I'm assuming the encompassing of VOLTA in the ONOS controller block really just means ONOS is controlling VOLTA, not VOLTA is part of ONOS. Second of all, I'm trying to understand why a management app has to be written as an ONOS app as opposed to something that's standalone process outside of ONOS.
Yeah, I have the same question, especially since it's a management app.
Well, we were thinking of how are things going to be deployed on the compute in that instance. If you just see that I can just, I mean, it's going to be on the compute in this pod. It's going to be in the structural layout of what's going on in the pod. We were hoping to take advantages of any type of HA application that ONOS has already done, any type of HA that VOLTA has already done, and that it's sitting there taking advantage of all of those things that are already there and simply providing a northbound interface.
My difficulty with this is we should be disaggregating stuff, not creating monolithic type applications. So HA is done by Kubernetes in VOLTA, and any management application would fall under that umbrella. It could be a Docker container, it could be self-contained, as opposed to putting yet another dependency in there that this needs to be deployed exclusively with ONOS, which from my perspective, is the wrong direction for VOLTA. It should be deployable with any controller. And so
I'm fine with that. I'm not tied to ONOS. We were tying it in with ONOS because we already have all of these little ONOS apps that exist that we're kind of tied to anyways, right? So
I understand that, and if you've been in some discussions that we've had, at least, they shouldn't really be there. They should be independent. They should be outside so that VOLTA can run independently as opposed to being joined at the hip. But we're just making the situation worse as opposed to tending in the right direction, which is toward disaggregation, right? Where things are being run as microservices as opposed to macro monolithic apps. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure others share it. Whether or not they want to speak up or not is
I am not trying to tie anything together other than what can I deploy in 2018 and what is already there. So I don't have any other infrastructure. So this is the only infrastructure that's going to go in. These are the only compute resources that are going to go in. These are the only fabric switches that are going to go in. This is my edge, and this is where I'm going to put stuff. So
yeah. So here's the thing. So you need a management app for VOLTA, and ONOS today only interacts with VOLTA through OpenFlow. Well, you can't do management through OpenFlow. So you'd have to extend the way ONOS is communicating with VOLTA somehow in order to do the management. So if you're going to do all that.
Yeah, this is sort of, I agree with some of the things that Sergio is saying. I mean, as a VOLTA community, we rather, my thinking is that we rather think about what that interface is and what it should do, and where the management application is going to reside, or what it's going to do. Right? I mean, we should think from a VOLTA perspective and not maybe focus too much on who's actually going to do the work where. That's just my 2 cents. But
well, I mean, right now AT&T is trying to get a plan, and we have to know where the resources are going to go and what compute resources are they going to be running on, and where are they going to be. And we believe it's at the local edge, and we believe it's inside of this pod. If we want to say that there's no ONOS there, I'm fine with there being no ONOS there, but there has to be something there on that pod.
I don't believe we're saying there's no ONOS there. What we are saying is that, or at least what I'm trying to get across is that let's not add even more to the current aggregation that we've got. let's, as Saurav said, let's figure out what we need to do for this management app, what the interface needs to be, how it interacts with VOLTA, and then make a decision on the best place to put it after the fact. It will still be in that pod. There's no denying that it'll end up in that pod. It may end up in the VOLTA cluster itself as yet another microservice that presents a northbound API, right?
Right. So, yeah, okay. Completely agreed. And
I'm fine with that as well. I assumed that there would be some benefit to be able to deploy this as an ONOS app because we can already deploy a VOLTA and a AAA and a DHCP2 relay and other things. I assumed that there would be some benefit to be able to do it as an ONOS app for deployment as opposed to creating yet another deployment mechanism that we would have to do in order to deploy this app inside this hardware. If you guys think that it's super easy to do that in 2018, otherwise,
let's go through the proposal. Let's at least hear out Michael. Right? Let's go through the proposal. Maybe it is an option, right? And maybe it is a option.
Yeah. So the rest of the proposal beyond this slide, and it's good we're talking about this slide. And I'm not tied to this box being inside of ONOS. I'm not tied to it. What I am proposing is, and what I have proposed here is some of the user stories of what I think this management app should do, and the interface it should provide northbound. I haven't really defined the interface I believe it needs to have to VOLTA. I was going to let people decide what's the best way to talk to VOLTA and control VOLTA and manage the things in VOLTA, but I have presented more what is the northbound interface of this app. And I thought a good place to put it would be in here. If we want it to be a completely separate microservice that's just running on this hardware that somehow gets deployed and all on its own,
somehow,
that's
right?
fine with me.
Sorry, if it were a separate microservice, it would likely get deployed through Kubernetes the same way the rest of all the VOLTA microservices get deployed. So it wouldn't be anything mystical or magical. It would just be a.
Okay, good. That's just my education then. I thought it would be easier to put it in here, and if it's not, I'm not tied to this box being inside this box. I just put it there because there was other stuff there already.
Quickly. So I agree. The most obvious reason why it can't become an ONOS app is because of the limitation of the interface, open flow management over that interface. It doesn't make sense. My bigger question is, why is this entire function not awesome? This management, does there need to be another layer of management? Because awesome. Well, and I didn't put awesome on this directly because awesome has, and this very well could be awesome, or this could be what has been talked about as local awesome. But local awesome has also been talked about being more of a ONAP, network cloud, whatever type of deployment that we're not going to have in 2018. So really, we could call this local awesome, but this is local awesome sitting inside this VOLTA pod or this peripheral pod. Yeah, you need a stepping stone. Okay.
So that's why I didn't directly call it awesome, but yeah, I mean it is doing those types of functions, and I'm just trying to locate it here inside each set of resources because that's where it's going to have to be for 2018 now.
Okay.
And also to be honest, right? So awesome is ONAP, pretty ONAP specific application. So we may have other service provider who are not going to use ONAP or awesome. So things has to be more generic if we're going through that route, right? So I think let's
well, right. I was definitely trying to be generic.
No.
I'm just trying to say, trying to say this could be here, but I agree with the comment that this is kind of the space of local awesome. It is in that space of functionality.
So Mike, I'm trying to say let you finish your presentation, and then we can add additional comments. And I definitely would like to hear other service providers, input about this one too. So let's go let's move on.
So the rest of the presentation does not really address whether management is an ONOS app or how it works or even the interfaces down to VOLTA, but really provides the upper level, high level use cases that we think that it should be fulfilling. So what are we going to be doing in this management of this pod? It could be a new ONOS application, group of applications, group of microservices. We see that there are distinct functions that could be that need to be provided. We think that providing a Yang model upstream is a good way to do it. It can make industry, I mean, not industry standard, but I mean, a Yang model can provide a good interface, not tied to netconf or refconf or any kind of deployment of Yang. But WT383 from BDF really provides a lot of what we think these interfaces need to do in terms of management. So I think that's a good place to start as a foundation of being able to do the things. For various different models, we see that operators can do things in a various different way. AT&T sees the need to do a top-down model from northbound. So we see the need to provide a northbound model, but we don't see that conflicts with VOLTA 2.0 being more of a bottom-up approach. So, we believe that part of this management app's responsibility is to translate between those two worlds, to be able to take static top-down models of identifying where ports reside on what devices and how they're named and things, and being able to translate into some of the dynamic things that the bottom-up approach is doing. And we'll talk about a little bit about that later. But basically, this service, or for lack of a better term, would be part of that glue that ties those things together. So we see that there's definitely a number of different areas that we will go through in terms of what are all of these things that this service or these multiple services should be doing. Things like pod management, OLT management, ONT management, status reporting. We talked about that last week in terms of a lot of the status data that we need to be able to be collecting and sending upstream. Those Yang models can reside in a service that's providing that upstream Yang interface, whereas going down into VOLTHA, or I mean, if putting Yang in VOLTHA seems like the right way to go, then maybe it's passing through this layer and just going directly to Yang on top of VOLTHA. We weren't necessarily trying to push Yang all the way down into VOLTHA. Whatever the most efficient way to interact with VOLTHA would be, but we think having this service, this interface upwards would be a good place. Alarms and PM are on the table to be talked about further next Tuesday, but we definitely see those as areas of management that need to happen. Profile management. It's interesting that we got a wiki update. I haven't had a chance to read through all of that, and I look forward to taking what has been put in onto the wiki and kind of tying it in here. But definitely, I see. We'll talk about it a little bit later. I see the ability to provide some type of interface, maybe not a strict, 385 type of model for PON, but having a way of managing profiles in this type of northbound service with some type of Yang models, but maybe it's much more generic and a much more simplified way. And then from service provisioning, top-down service provisioning point of view, how do we tie very high-level concepts coming down from the northbound and again into the details of what's going on with downstream VOLTHA with technology profiles and dynamic ONT port numbers and different pieces that we don't want necessarily the upstream to have to manage. We can manage it here. The last two bullets are still percolating in my mind, and anybody that wants to percolate with me is welcome to percolate, but we'll definitely try to work through some of those ideas in a future meeting. So for pod management, what are some of the things that we see that we will need to be able to do on the pod itself? There may very well be in 2018 just the need to have some manual installation steps and some things, but we do think that there will be the desire to have some information about the hardware that's residing in the pod. This is kind of more the common hardware, the fabric pieces, the compute pieces, being able to inventory that stuff and to kind of see the components and provide that view upstream of what are the pieces, the hardware pieces of the pod itself. Not really the VOLTHA pieces. We think that the VOLTHA hardware pieces get managed with some of the other layers and some of the other abstractions, but this is kind of more the infrastructure pieces. Being able to manage things about the pod in terms of I want to push down a new VOLTHA release to get upgraded, or I need to push down some ONOS app updates or microservice updates or whatever. Being able to manage some of the things that are going on with the pod and how we're going to lifecycle manage the software components in there, being able to monitor what's going on in the pod. Ooh, are certain CPU resources being pegged? Am I having times where my pod is overworked? My compute resources are drained. Or my compute resources are rebooting because of an exception. My compute resources or fabric switches or anyway, any of the status of any of the things, any of the common pieces of things that are going on, and setting up alarms. Alarms again will be talked about Monday, but all of those things that might be going on inside of the pod, to get a view of what's going on in there. We think we need to be able to see those things and have APIs that are doing those things. Some of the things that probably won't be happening in the short term, but could be envisioned in the longer term. If I need to add more compute, or if I need to add another switch to add some more Tibit plugs into the configuration, how am I going to possibly manage some of those additional hardware resources? Or if I find that I've just put one too many Voltas, the Volta hardware is just kind of, I added this last Volta piece of hardware, and all of a sudden my compute resources kind of crash, and I don't really have enough compute resources to process the load. Maybe I have to roll that Volta hardware off onto a new pod or something like that. Don't see that this is a short-term use case, but these are some of the things that we think that managing the pod might entail in the future. We don't have a lot of concrete Yang models identified yet. I'm still working on finding some of those that can do a lot of this stuff. I believe that there probably are quite a few and I just haven't, and there may even be some under all the stuff that's going on under ONAP and everything. I just haven't had the time to put all those together, but we definitely think that there's a pod management component of what we need to be doing. OLT management. This is really kind of the resources of a piece of Volta hardware that gets put in, and at least from AT&T's point of view, we're going to put an identifier. We call it a CLLI. Could just be a name identifier, something that says this is a piece of equipment that we're going to put services on, and we're going to give it a name, and we're going to relate it to a serial number, so that whenever our ordering systems want to go place a service at a site, we know, hey, this particular site is served by this particular OLT named so and so. So he's got so many ports, and I have a port that's free, and I'm going to go put resources and put things on a port. So managing that identifier, that name of what this Volta is, and tying it with specific hardware, we think is part of what this application is doing. Maybe it's bottom-up discovered inside of Volta with a serial number that comes up, and boom, hey, I've got new Volta hardware. Well, then Northbound Interface comes down and says, well, that particular serial number is this piece. This is the identity of that thing, and we think that this application would be managing that. And then you would have things like retrieving all of the different hardware inventory information and part numbers and serial numbers and rev dates and all of those kinds of things that come with hardware inventory. Managing the software upgrades for that OLT. Maybe it's more considered firmware or whatever, but managing, pushing software down onto that piece of hardware, resetting that piece of hardware, having a control flow that can reset the full OLT. Taking a database backup of the things that are associated with that OLT. That's definitely something that our operations teams want to be able to do, to say, hey, I've got a daily set of configurations for this OLT
not for my whole network, or not for the whole pod, or not for the whole whatever, but I can take a snapshot of the configurations that were on that OLT. And if I need to go back to that, I can dump those configurations for that particular OLT back down onto the thing, removing an OLT that's no longer in use. Today, on all of our OLTs, we have hardware diagnostics that can be run. So obviously it's a service impacting type of diagnostic. But running a hardware diagnostic and providing that data back up through an interface is something that we see as important. And then obviously inside that OLT, there's all sorts of different little SFPs that are connected onto different ports, providing the inventory information and status information about all those little pluggable devices that might be residing within the OLT is also something operationally we do on a regular basis. And we think that WT383 provides Yang models to manage all of this pretty much. ONT management. Again, kind of bringing the abstract from a top-down OSS point of view, saying, I think this ONT is residing on this OLT, and is this ONT port number, that's how I'm going to identify it from an upstream point of view. How does that tie into all the dynamic things that might be happening in VOLTA? This is kind of the bridge of how that happens, and tying the specific to the dynamic, and being able to put those things together. Being able to, again, hardware inventory information, software upgrades, resets, database configurations. We do have some ONTs today in our network that will persistently store in the flash the data that it has done. Maybe or maybe not the ONTs that are going to be working with VOLTA have that ability or not, but we have the ability to on the ONTs that support it, persist that data to local flash on the ONT itself. Deleting ONTs, again, running diagnostics, retrieving SFPs, disabling it. Today we have operational techniques to turn down the uni ports on the ONT. So we have the ability to disable and re-enable, reset the uni ports on the ONT itself. Those are interfaces that our operations teams use today, and we have available. Again, we think that 383 covers all of these types of interfaces. So the final slide that I have here today, we talked about briefly. Status reporting we talked about on a previous call, alarm and performance monitoring coming up, and then profile management. We do think that there is the need from probably an operations point of view to be able to bring down profiles and possibly, say, hey, these are the default profiles that we want to be able to use for this type of service. We don't want that to necessarily be part of the OSS flow. We don't want upstream OSSs to have to guess the profile number that would be used. But we do, from an AT&T point of view, AT&T wants to say we want the 4Q 3 Gem 1 TCONT model, and so here we're gonna maybe that's one of the default ones. So maybe AT&T says, oh hey, I want this default profile number 32 or number 1 or whatever it is the one that I want to use when I'm making PON HISA service requests or whatever. So definitely some level of profile management that's in there, or maybe AT&T says, well, no, not quite exactly right, the technology profile. I want to provide my own new profile,
And maybe that's simply a push of a JSON blob that goes in and configures all of that stuff. And I need to read obviously the wiki a little bit closer as to how that would happen. But providing the ability in this application to do some of that stuff, I will take the action to go back and read the wiki further, and maybe we can talk about how this all fits together. I can talk and we can bring further. And then again, on the service provisioning side, not having the upstream be all aware of the technology profiles or how to do meters or how to do all of that other stuff, to be able to take the abstract type of ideas of this is an OLT with a name and a port and a uni and all those types of things, and this is a speed that I want to put on that port, and have that be a very simple interface that's coming down, and having this application know how to go talk to the the ONOS OLT app, or talk to the AAA app, or talk to whatever things that I don't know why I put the AAA app in there, but talk to VOLTHA possibly through the ONOS apps, or if we're even trying to get rid of the ONOS apps, and have them be separate microservices as well. I'm not particularly tied to ONOS. I just was using what was there. So these are some of the ideas that we're having as things, as operational needs, and as top-down subscriber flow needs, and how we're seeing them kind of fit. This isn't intended to be the full definition of how it all works, but this is some of our understanding of what we need to be able to do from a management interface. And obviously there's lots left to discover and find out. But this is kind of where we're at, and we're open for discussions, open for turning things into microservices, open for any type of recommendations that the community can have.
Michael, this is Bora speaking. Thank you very much. I mean, this really sets the context very clearly. Very well thought study, and I now have a much better idea and much clearer view of the requirements. Of course, there will be detailed requirements further on, but this is really a great summary. Thank you for that. So after having a few sessions with Shad at ONF for the last 2 days, I'm also looking at Saurav to confirm this. As I see, VOLTHA has 2 major interfaces on its northbound. One of them is the open flow for flow management that comes from ONOS. The other one is just a management API, which actually supports 2 technologies. One is HTTP, and the other one is gRPC. But no matter what the technology is, there is a global northbound API.
So no, that's not correct. So VOLTHA has, the core only has one API. It's a gRPC API, and above there are agents that utilize that gRPC API to produce or present different API formats. OpenFlow being one of them, the other API format being a REST interface, the other API being
I see. Okay.
And the CLI also connects through gRPC. So there's only one northbound within VOLTHA. Okay,
Thank you for the clarification. So every other technology sits on top of gRPC.
All the others sit on top of gRPC, and what I'm confused about is most of the stuff that was in this presentation smells to me like it could be done through the CLI or through the REST interface that VOLTHA's already got. So I'm trying to understand what exactly is different from what VOLTHA already presents through its REST interface northbound and what we've just seen here. If anybody
because a CLI interface is a very specific, presenting a CLI interface northbound is a very specific VOLTHA only implementation type of interface. That means I tie directly anything upstream of VOLTHA into VOLTHA's CLI language syntax.
No, not necessarily. if you use a REST interface, you're not using the CLI, right? There's a REST interface northbound as well, and that REST interface has a model, and that model is a Swagger model that can be used by any mechanism that understands Swagger to automatically generate APIs for it. I'm still not getting why we need another layer of abstraction on top of it, other than adding complexity and making it more difficult to understand than it already is.
Well, a lot of the translations of things into from a very abstract type of I have an OLT with a name, and I have a port, and I have a OLT number that is defined from an upstream interface into the details of all the dynamic nature of what's going on. I don't want to push all of the how do I learn all of those things up into my OSS BSS. How do I know all of those things in my OSS BSS? Access modeling, access devices. If I want to have an OSAM that can manage a G.fast DPU from another vendor that's not underneath VOLTA, or if I want to have an OSAM that's going to manage an access piece of equipment that is an OLT that is not under VOLTA, if I wanted to manage VOLTA, I want to try to present a common access type of management interface upstream that WT383 provides a lot of it, as we've detailed here. A lot of that interface has already been provided, and it simplifies our interactions with access nodes if they can provide an interface that is along the lines of all the other access tiers provide.
So basically, to fit into the model that we currently use today, all you need is another Docker container that speaks VOLTA gRPC southbound and WT383, I believe you said, northbound, and you're done. It's as simple as that.
Okay,
it's the same thing.
Okay, well if that is covered by all these use cases and that's as simple as it is, then good. I
don't know how complex WT383 is, so don't so the mapping may not be a walk in the park, but the model that is employed by VOLTA today is the gRPC interface, and
that's why I didn't get into specifying a whole bunch of changes for VOLTA. I specified the northbound use cases that I see that we have, and how they would translate to the things that we need to do. And if that translates simply into this service making gRPC calls into VOLTA, I'm fine with that.
Well, keep in mind that we already have XPON today, which uses REST and CLI to do WT385. So that's already been implemented. So we know that's doable.
Well, XPON just got gutted though, right?
Yeah, it's going away. I'm trying to portray it as a proof of concept that the REST interface was used and that can be modeled over gRPC easily. Yeah.
We already have an example where the implementation that I just.
No, I'm not trying to imply a lot of work on VOLTA. I'm trying to describe where we would like to see a northbound interface and the functionalities that we would like to see it do, and a language we would like to see it talk. And if it all fits together, I'm good. I'm not trying to necessarily change a bunch of VOLTA's architecture in this.
Exactly. This is user
Michael, I have a question about this northbound that you're talking about and the use of the WT383 models. Now, is this something that the current operators, including AT&T, typically use? They use this model and they use Yang on say netconf from your existing sort of OSS systems, and the second part of the question.
You're cutting out, Saurav, unless it's me.
No, you're cutting off, Saurav.
For example, also looking like. I could be cutting off. I'm actually driving. Yeah, sorry. I'm actually driving and dropping off my kids to school at this time. So
So my understanding of WT383 is that it's currently a working text within the BBF. It is not a standard yet.
No, TR 383 is a technical report. It's a standard.
Oh, it is? Okay.
385 is the working text, but 383 is actually TR 383.
Oh, it's TR, not WTR.
I knew 383 was out for a vote. I guess it's been ratified.
Yeah,
since
it just out for a vote.
I mean, it's very WT 383 is very close to becoming an industry standard if it's not already. So we can work through that. But it has a lot of this type of management, a lot of software management, a lot of hardware inventory management, a lot of reset, and I mean it just has a lot of this already there, and we expect that access equipment will be using these models as we take new access equipment into our network. We're expecting them to be conforming to the latest industry standard models that we can provide. So do we have access equipment today using 383? No, but this is what we expect to be seeing in the future.
So can folks hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can anyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was asking, is this the sort of the use of WT383 is planned for the future and possibly in OSAM and but what does your legacy sort of OSS systems use now? I mean, surely it doesn't use these models.
The only current access gear that we have in our network that is using Yang is a DPU, a G.fast DPU, and we will be pushing this DPU to be using 383. It doesn't currently use 383 because the software it was ahead of 383, but we are definitely pushing them to implement 383.
Okay, so back in Dallas, I think maybe it was Bill Hurst that said it, that this deployment still needs to be, or this deployment of VOLTA still needs to work with the legacy OSS systems. So what does the legacy OSS systems use for this kind of management?
Well, this is kind of the top-down model of a very simple API. Right now, we're trying to simplify our OSSs in terms of. Right now we have a potentially a long development life cycle in our OSSs, as we have way too many details about what's actually going on in the access gear. So where we see the WT383 Yang models being consumed is more at an awesome level. So we see that awesome is the place that would be consuming the 383 Yang models and providing an even simpler interface into our OSSs. So as long as we have the ability to provide a top-down provisioning, a very simple top-down provisioning type of interface through what's coming in through our OSSs, and then be able to provide some type of standard output upstream in terms of statistics, in terms of these things. We see that kind of G-Awesome is the place that people would be coming if we're talking about a statistics OSS. We have one called BBT. BBT would be coming into G-Awesome to pull statistics or to register for streaming statistics or whatever. Or if we have type of a cares function that is coming down to pull immediate stats for a port. We see that kind of all residing in G-Awesome and kind of outside the scope of OSS, BSS. So we don't have to put all of that node-specific, implementation-specific detail into all of the OSSs. So we definitely need to support our legacy OSSs with a top-down flow, but we want to really simplify that to the extent that we can, and this application is helping us do that, or this service is helping us do that, as well as GAwesome is helping us do that. So OSS would come into GAwesome, GAwesome would come down to this service.
Okay, so now I think I have a better idea of what you're saying. Your legacy OSS will talk to Awesome, but Awesome doesn't exist yet. But you're assuming that Awesome is going to talk to this, is then on its southbound is going to talk to this northbound API or whatever this management application or container or microservice is doing. That doesn't exist yet either. You're not looking at a place where your OSS, BSS, OSS system is directly talking to this management container, right?
No, no.
Why is that? Is that because OSS tries to do too much, or that's too?
Yes, our OSS BSS. Yes, our OSS BSS right now is too tightly coupled with our hardware implementations, and we get long development times and long cycles. We're wanting to decouple our OSS BSS from this as much as possible, and to be able to spin faster, and to be able to provide services faster, and to be able to do stuff faster without having all of the implementation specifics of a particular technology implementation have to be figured out inside of OSS BSS.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
I have a question. Is the management application at the top of OLS same as another OLS app, lambda VOLT?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I understood the question.
Okay. There will be OLS app to provide the VOLTHA configuration presented in your your slides. My question is the management application same as the other OLS app, lambda VOLT?
No, it is not. The VOLT application is ONOS is a control application. It's not meant to do these things.
I would think that the management application could very well use the VOLT application. Could either use the VOLT application or talk to VOLTHA directly as it would be needed. So it is. I think it is the management application or management service or management group of services. I think is above is doing more than the VOLT application.
It's doing a whole lot
Agreed.
more.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly.
The OLT application. The OLT application in ONOS is really for flows, pushing down protocol flows and setting up VLANs, layer 2 stuff.
That's right.
Nothing to do with
Well,
I agree with everything.
So this service provisioning, kind of upstream management application, I think is pulling in some very abstract concepts and potentially tying that into the VOLT application.
Okay, fair enough.
That would be more specific to the dynamic nature of what's going on in VOLTHA, and it would not be making flow requests itself. It would be using
something more abstract. That makes sense. That one bullet makes sense to me.
None of my other bullets make sense, but that one does. Okay.
Like they all make sense. That one makes sense for ONOS. No OLT app. Let me be more specific.
I just want to do a time check. We are just past the top of the hour.
Wow, I did use all of the time. Look at that. Well, good discussion. I appreciate the feedback. I will. If the consensus of the community is making a separate microservices, no big deal, and we got that, and we should be able to figure that out super quick. I'll just move it out, and I will I will change my little box here, and I will take it outside of Onos and just make it its own little. And I can take Volta outside. If you think Volta sits outside of Onos and management sits outside of Onos, then I will shrink down the Onos box and just put them as separate microservices running in the software box. If I will make those changes. If any other comments, I will post this up on Volta Discuss, and any other feedback is appreciated.
So yeah, my feedback would be, like I was interrupted the previous one. I feel like that management functionality you're describing here will be handled by the global API handler. So the global service of Volta, and it will reside in the Volta box that you have just depicted here. And there will be some part of the requirements that you have mentioned that are already covered by this global Volta service, but there will be some other maybe extensions that we will need to add there. But in terms of functionality, I guess, to fulfill the the overall flow, I mean the requests. But because Volta will go to separate deployment environments, that will need to be mediated as well through OSAM, or I don't know, through another shim layer, Volta mediation layer kind of thing, which I strongly believe, and for which we had a brief discussion with Sean yesterday, that would reside out of Volta concept. I mean, Volta should have its own northbound API and be self-contained, regardless of the deployment environment. And for each deployment environment, we will need to have a separate mediation layer that will actually take requests from OSS or from ONAP or from Google Fiber or from any other deployment environment, and will convert them into Volta equivalents, and that should not be part of the pod.
So Bora, let's table that right now. We're out of time. Thanks very much, Michael. Appreciate if you can add the slides to the Volta Discuss mailing list. I've been moving all of our slides onto the wiki. Actually, it's up to you if you want to just directly add it to the wiki yourself. But great discussion.
Okay. I mean, if there's a spot on the wiki where I can add it. I can put it on Volta Discuss, and I can add it to the wiki if there's a.
Yeah, so there is an FCAPS section under Volta 2.0 architecture.
Okay, yeah, I can put these slides and the previous slides that we did. I can put those under there.
Your previous ones are already there, so
okay, well,
just add
good.
To it, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I will. I'm not sure. I will move management out from. I will move management and Volta out from under Onos, and we may have to have some further discussions about where it actually goes. But I understand that pieces might be able to be covered by Volta. I'm not sure I followed all of the discussion about, but anyway, we can discuss further in a later meeting. But I'll move it out from under Onos. I'll take that and move it out.
Okay, so with that, I think we're going to wrap up the call today since we're a little bit over time. And so, Mike, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the participants for the discussion. And then feel free to continue comments using Volta Discuss so the dialogue can continue after the meeting today if needed. So thank you, everyone. And we do have another presentation scheduled as well as sprint updates on Tuesday's call next So thank you, everyone, and I will go ahead and stop the recording and drop the bridge.